Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for being here today. I am so excited to have us getting to know one of my dear friends and mentors, Mike Kim. Mike recently has published a book, and I just shared with him that it's become my new religion. To understand how to get a message out to the people that we love to most influence and affect in our lives. Let me tell you a little bit about Mike. So yes, he is an author. He's also a speaker. He's a marketing strategist, and he's been utilized by some of the top names in our industry, the people that lean into experts to have eyeballs on them and their messaging, such as John Maxwell, Donald Miller, and Suzanne Evans. He was the chief marketing officer of a multi-million-dollar company near New York City. And nowadays, you'll hear him being invited to speak on major stages and conferences because his wisdom goes in. What I love most about Mike, he's humble. He's done this. He's worked the process. He's not some expert on the stage saying this is what you need to do. He's done it. So, Mike, thank you so much for being with us today, because I have questions and I know other people are going to unpack this and put this into their life. And I'm just so looking forward to our conversation together.
Well, thank you, Tina Marie, for that warm welcome. It is an honor to be here. And for anyone tuning in, I hope to add some value to everyone today. I'm just going to share what I've learned, and hopefully it'll help light a little bit of your path.
Thank you so much. So the book, You Are the Brand, an 8-step blueprint to showcase your unique expertise and build a highly profitable, yes, we want that, personally fulfilling business. I love that you put that in the tagline and on the cover, a personally fulfilling business, because there's plenty of us that have gotten to the place where we thought we were going to be. We arrive there and it's not fulfilling. In fact, I think that's what was leading you to building your own brand in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we go through different phases of life, and it's interesting. Like when we look back on our lives are often demarcated by jobs that we have, right? Like we think of life in seasons in terms of our work. That's how important work is. It's very rare that you and I will ever meet anyone who says that they're completely fulfilled in life and yet hate their work. Work's just too big a part of it. Right? Yeah. It's just too big. It's too big a part of it. 8 hours, 12 hours a day, you name it, between the commutes and everything. And, and so for me, when I was looking at my life, I was, in my mid 30s, and I was the CMO of this company. And I was asking myself these tougher questions, like, is this really what I want to do with the rest of my life? And it wasn't just what I did at work. It was all the stuff that was like kind of peripheral to work. Getting up, fighting the New York traffic, going to meetings, playing office politics, all this stuff. I was just like, I don't really think I'm going to look back at my life and say that I'm really glad I did this. Now, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to do that. And I think
that's a great starting point.
Yeah.
That's a great starting point. Knowing what we don't want leads us to what we do want. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I think that word fulfillment, right? I'm kind of a word nerd. And if you really think about that word fulfillment, it's you're becoming full through the process of getting filled. Ment means the process of, MENT. So if we want a life of fulfillment, it means that we have to continually fill ourselves with the things that will get us to that point. And work is such a big part of it. And that's really why eventually I struck out on my own.
That's awesome. And I know you're speaking to the heart of so many of us, that we have these callings and yearnings and the longing inside that says there's got to be more. We have this want. And, for myself, I also came up against who do I want to be whenever I launch? And I also love that you unpack that in the book. Who do you want to be? What is your niche? Are you an ideapreneur, which is one of your words? Or are you a how-to-preneur? So help us all understand, whenever you have that confusion of you have the longing, where do you start with?
Yeah, I wish that this type of business, being an expert, being a speaker, sharing your ideas, creating impact with your ideas, getting your message heard, I wish it was as simple as like opening a pizza shop.
Right.
Because there's no emotion really in that, right? It's just a very formulaic process. You pick a location, you draw up a business plan, you get a loan, you get customers, and yada, yada, yada.
Mhm.
The difference in this line of work is that we want what we do to earn revenue to also match with our innermost desires. The problem is our desires change. Our preferences change very fluidly, actually. I like to describe it like trying to nail down Jell-O. So our tastes change over time.
Mhm.
They change a lot within just even a month, right? It's why we have the flavor of the month.
Mhm.
And so what I say to people is start first with yourself. And what I mean by that is ask yourself, who do I need to become in order to serve the people I want to serve? Not just in terms of what do I want to say to them, but who do I need to become? Do I need to be a risk taker? Do I need to become a better communicator? Do I need to become more self-aware? Because there's no real shortcut. If
Mhm.
you're going to build a business that is an extension of you, there's no real shortcut. Otherwise, go flip properties, do weird things online. There are other ways to just make money.
Right.
But if you're going to show up every day and podcast and blog and speak from a stage and coach people, you better really work on yourself. And so that's really where the starting point is.
That's awesome. And, you also talk about feedback loops. We need to have people around us that can have eyeballs on us as well, because sometimes we can be our own either worst enemy or we're going with blinders down the pathway, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the in the beginning, the journey is lonely. I remember when I started out. I mean, nobody was listening to what I had to say. I didn't know anybody in the space. I started from zero, just like everybody else started from zero. And that's the amazing thing about this industry. You can't buy influence. You can't buy notoriety. You can't buy a following. Every expert that you see out there started from zero. And when they started from zero, they just started putting one foot in front of the other. They would publish something on social media. They didn't know if it would work. You can field test all you want. And I know, you have kids, I don't, but I'm going to use this analogy. Like a lot of people, yeah, I have nephews and people are always like, how do you know I'm doing it right? How do I know and it's like trying to go to a mother and saying, we guarantee that your kid's going to be really cute. We can tell by the ultrasound. That's not true. You don't know what the baby's going to look like until the baby is birthed. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's the same thing with our content. It's the same thing with our brands. I like to plan as much as I can with my clients, with my colleagues, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, I don't have a crystal ball.
Right.
You just got to publish and start putting things out there. Then you'll find your voice. Then you'll find your niche. Then you'll find what you do like and what you don't like. And then the picture becomes more clear.
So, and as we talk today, I want to help people understand more of your 8-step blueprint, which begins with a lot of P's. So if you like the letter P, you'll find those. But help me understand, whenever we have our messaging in the brand, sometimes people want to be everything to everybody. Like we want to, make sure that people understand us. And that's like a broad range, or we're like a floodlight out there trying to reach more people. What would you say to that?
I would say I understand where that's coming from, because nobody wants to be yelled at. No one wants to be made fun of. No one wants to be ridiculed or ignored. Like very few people actually wake up in the morning and say, I can't wait to offend half of the audience out there on social media. We want to be liked. We want to be trusted. We want deeply that affirmation from people. We want the likes, the comments, the shares, and the encouragement. Who doesn't? Right. And yet, eventually, if you dig deep enough, you will find that you have, number one, the first P, which is a point of view. Mm-hmm. And you have to double down, triple down, 10x down on your point of view, because it's very hard to sell anything if you don't really know what you want to say. Yeah. And the point of view is really the starting point from which you can step out and say to the world, this is what I think about a few things. And I know that's hard, because a lot of us who have grown up in corporate America, we have been in these industries that are not innovative, or we get a slap on the wrist anytime we say anything outside of the box. It's a little tough. But eventually you get to the core of who you are and you find out what you really think about certain things. And that's the first step. It's your point of view.
Yeah. And not only defending it because it's yours, but also not trying to get everybody to see it, right? We can have our
Yes.
point of view and it need not be approved. What I've loved about your brand and your messaging to your audiences is that you stay consistent with who you are. And yes, we've spoken about that. Things become fluid. One message that just struck my heart and soul whenever I first met you was that marketing isn't about closing a sale. It's about opening a relationship. And hallelujah, I believe that. Right. And so that's like one of your core values, one of your core belief systems. It's staying consistent to who you are, and it attracts your audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's my point of view on a particular topic, marketing. Now I have other points of view on marketing, but I've worked hard to distill it down to that. And if you really think about what helps us figure out or uncover our point of view, you just ask yourself 3 questions, and these are in the book. But number 1, what pisses you off? Number 2, what breaks your heart? And number 3, what's the big problem you're trying to solve? And as you start to really do this, it's often very helpful with a friend or a coach just to dig into it. I leave them purposely open-ended. You start to uncover things.
Mm-hmm.
And Tina Marie, like I'm a marketing and brand guy, but when I answered those questions, I didn't really wake up in the morning and say, you know what really pisses me off? Bad marketing. And what breaks my heart is terrible copywriting. That actually wasn't true. What ticked me off and broke my heart was that there are so many good people out in the world whose dreams are squashed, whose expertise is buried, whose experiences in life and the things that they've learned, good and bad, go unshared because they are working in a corporate structure or a top-down structure that just squashes all of that. And so I feel like the world is not a better place when the majority of people aren't happy with what they do for a living. So I'm going to help that small sliver of the population who wants to create impact with their ideas and get their message heard, and who wants to live a life of impact. Now, what that meant for me was I'm almost like a life coach disguised as a marketing guy.
Right.
But
That's true.
But that's what helped me
Mm-hmm.
really lock in. And see, even right there, that was important for me to follow my own exercises, because that's what gave me the clarity to keep pushing forward. I don't think about marketing just for the sake of marketing. I think about how can I help Jane, or how can I help Dave? How can I help Sophie unlock who they are and step into that.
Beautiful.
And share their ideas through marketing. But what's really going on is I want them to be the best version of themselves that they can be, and the world to benefit from what they have to say.
That's beautiful. It's so powerful. And it's, whenever I hear your words in that way, it's more than marketing. It's messaging. It's that message that we tell ourselves first, right? We give ourselves the courage and the permission to be who we are and to say what we think and feel and know. And then to not know part of it, because we won't, there's plenty of the path ahead that we do not know about. And then the other thing is the messaging from that internal source out into the world so that you stay in alignment with who you are and message that. And you've helped me definitely get that clarity. And that brings us to the next P, which is personal stories. And I love how you help people have the courage to tell their personal story. If we're not telling our personal story, we're not building relationships. Right, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, you said it perfectly. Think about what happens when you sit down to dinner with a friend, or a loved one, or a partner, or one of your kids, or a nephew, right? Mm-hmm. You don't just talk about empty. You tell stories. How was your day today? How was school today? How was work today? How was golf? How did you play? We share stories all the time. And now, the thing is, when I tell people share your stories, they get a little bit worried, because now they think, do I have to write my autobiography or something like that? Yeah. No, you don't. But what we have to understand is that personal stories are what help us stand out. It's what gives context to the content that we want to share. And I know that many folks, myself included, when I started out, will be tempted to think, I don't really have that interesting of a story. I'm not some rags to riches person. I didn't have a light from the heavens shine down on me when I was walking through the park one day and tell me who I was,
Right.
what could anyone possibly benefit from hearing my plain old story? I'm just a New Jersey kid,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
when I tell the stories that made an impact on me, and what I mean by that is like your life is normal, and then there's a catalyst or an explosion or an inciting incident that sets you on a path toward a new normal. That's the story you want to tell. And in the book, I talk about 3 kinds of stories: the founder story, the business story, and then the transformation story for the customer. But the overall journey of the story is your life was normal, there was an inciting incident, and now there's a new normal. And that happened to me several times throughout my life. I mean, if we all look back on our lives, there are key watershed moments. There are key explosive moments that set us on a new path.
Right.
Those are the ones that you tell. And, you link them to what you share by simply just sharing the story. Hey, I left work because XYZ happened and I started down this path. And we do this in everyday life. We just don't realize it.
Exactly. And I just shared a post recently that was the day that I met Jackie, my wife. It was not planned. And how those inciting incidents all culminated. I had 4 people within 48 hours direct me her way. And not one of those things would I've been able to see where they were headed. But in hindsight, you see how it all added up to an amazing moment that transformed my life. So whenever I tell that story online or social media or from the stage, people are riveted. And it's not because, like you said, my life isn't unlike anybody else's. It's that people learn from stories, they connect with stories, and from that messaging, then they can know, trust, and like your brand and want to know more. And that's what we're doing today, right? Branding ourselves.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that because just about 2 weeks ago, I went on this retreat and I only knew one person there. And everybody, like my buddy took me out there, and everybody else was like a couple. So I didn't know these people. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, I'm an introvert. I like hanging out with people. I can batch that, but at some point I need to withdraw and recoup my energy. And what I mean by that, and what I'm saying here is that I'm not a great conversationalist with people I don't know. Like, I'm not just going to walk them. Hey, I'm Mike. Great to meet. I mean, I'll do that, but it will stall because at some point I'm just going to be tired. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was going around this group and I was like, what do I say to these people? And how do I, kickstart a conversation with 40 new people,
That would be overwhelming.
Yeah. And all of whom are in some sort of relationship with one another. Right. Mm-hmm. So I started to do this, Tina Marie. I started to say, hey, it's really good to meet you guys. How did you meet? Their face lights up.
Right.
We met in the crazy. We met like every couple.
There's a picture book,
to
right?
talk about. Yeah, they all love to talk about how they met because it's a story. And your face just lit up when you talked about how you met Jackie.
Yeah.
And so what I want all of us to understand who are listening is that it's such a natural way. Stories are such a natural way for you to talk about yourself and for others to talk about themselves. Mm-hmm. And when you invite people in to share your story and read your story, and for you to invite, them to share their story with you, amazing things happen. A relationship forms, right? So now I know, Tim and Lisa in a different way. And it's like, hey guys, how you doing?
It's memorable, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's impactful, right?
Yep.
It's not just, and there's so much marketing out there that's stale. It's trying to get your attention. And, for me, I feel like an object wanting to be, like a contrived way of visioning what my outcome is going to be, but it's not personal. And what I love about what you've done here and unpacked for us, and you are the brand, is help us understand that we get permission to be real. We don't have to do marketing the way it's been done. This is a whole new way of being that feels so authentic, so real, so enlivening. I can't wait to just apply these. And that gets me to another question. So there could be people that are saying, yes, I want to leave my corporate job and I want to build my own brand. It's the time. Woo, yeah. And so they're launching. And then there's people that have been out there as their own personal brand that have messaging, yet maybe they're saying it's time for rebranding. And then there are those people that believe that their messaging and branding solid, right? They're like, nope, I know who I am, core values, messaging out there, my customers, attracting them in, everything's good. What I found is this book seems to fit everyone because it helps us reassess what is our clarity of that messaging and bring a new energy to it. Would you say that that's one of your intentions in the book?
Yeah, I really wrote it for people who are in that startup phase of business where they're trying to validate an idea, a product, a niche. They're trying to figure out, who they are in that regard. And then really for people who are in the next phase of business, which I just call the ramp up phase. Mm-hmm. And this is where they have clients, they have paying customers, but their income, their revenue is kind of up and down. And it's a little bit unpredictable. And usually the reason for that is that their message isn't different enough. It doesn't cut through the noise. Mm-hmm. And so I really love working with people in those two steps because it's the most confusing phase of business. Right. You're still trying to throw things against the wall, trying to figure out where you are, trying to figure out what you want to offer, try to figure yourself out and not let alone the people you want to help. Right. And what I've found is that just a few key questions and giving time to let those things gestate mm-hmm. can give you a lot of clarity. I think people pull the plug a lot way too early when they're trying things out.
Or they possibly force it, right? They're I forget who it was that said basically the person who's doing the experiment and the observer of that experiment are the same. And if you change any one nuance of that, you're going to affect that outcome. So we could force our own outcome based on our own bias of what we think our brand is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I did that. I'll share a quick story. I did that when I first started out. 2013 was the year I really started trying to create content. And so I blogged every Monday that year. Mm-hmm. 2014 came along and I said, it's a great time for me to start a podcast. Let me start a podcast. Mm-hmm. And at the time I was working as the CMO of that company. So I figured I would launch a podcast talking to other small business owners, mm-hmm. sharing marketing tips. And so I named the podcast, I just forced it up and to the right. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now I knew what that meant. I realized most people didn't know what that meant. Up and to the right refers to, your profit loss statement over time.
Right.
If it's going up and to the right, the arrows are going up and to the right, it means you're making more money over time. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, well, I'm sure people understand that. And so I stuck a slogan on the podcast, small business, big marketing. So dumb, mm-hmm. right? Just not very cool. Okay. I used to not be good at this stuff. Right. And so I ran with a podcast for about 5 months. Like 20 some odd episodes, right?
Wow.
Every week. Mm-hmm. And 5 months is not a short amount of time, especially mm-hmm. when you start. I mean, 5 months feels like forever. And no one was really listening to the show. And the people who were not small business owners. They were all solopreneurs. Wow. They were all people who found me through my social media, people who found me through blogging communities that I was a part of because I was learning in those communities. And they just got to know me and they're like, hey, I'm going to check out your stuff. You're just starting out. I'd love to listen. And because I had some marketing background and experiences I shared on the podcast, people were coming to me for that. Now, I just forced it. I just went with it for 5 months. And
was it painful? Was it painful?
It was painful. Oh, it was absolutely painful.
Yeah.
I remember days when I woke up at, 4 a.m. to record a podcast before I went to work. I was sitting in my living room, like, trying to record this thing, edit out all the ums and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, nope, I will keep publishing until, it's head against the wall. Right. And finally, I lost kind of that energy behind it. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, I've got to really take a look at the hard numbers. I've given this 5 months. I've shared it the best I know how. Mm-hmm. Let me think about switching the podcast to focus on solopreneurs. I changed the name of the show to Brand You. I didn't have a better name at the time. Brand you was not my own invention. You know, that phrase had been out in the space for about 10 years.
Right.
Tom Peters, 1,000 True Fans, Kevin, I forgot his last name right now. But, you know, these guys have been talking about personal branding. So I just called the show Brand You.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't trademark a book title. So I just called Tina Marie. The show blew up.
Wow.
It just skyrocketed.
You were clear.
Like,
it was clarity.
I was clear. It was clear. Yeah. And I listened, I tried, mm-hmm. then I listened, and then I shifted gears. And that became actually, you know, the third P in my framework, one of my primary platforms.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The podcast became a platform. I had a blog. I now had a podcast. And those became the platforms from which I shared my insights, my stories, my personal stories, my point of view, mm-hmm. you know, everything's sequential on these platforms in terms of my podcast and my blog. And the show blew up. Within a few months, it went to like the top in Apple on personal branding.
Wow.
Now, thanks. You know, that it's incredible. But now here's the funny thing. 7 years later, there is a huge glut of personal brand podcasts out there.
Right.
You know, there are a ton of them out there. Am I scared? No. I have my audience. I have the people who know me.
It's needed.
It's a niche. It's needed, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not threatened by other voices in the space because I know which is the fourth P, positioning.
Right. Exactly.
I know where I stand relative to the competition. People know the kind of clients I've worked with. People know my personality. People know the path that I've walked. And a lot of folks will resonate with me over those things more than just the content, because the content, all things being equal, people will choose me or not choose me because of my background, my experiences, my clientele, my personality. Right. And that's okay. You know?
That's awesome. And I love that you have that viewpoint, because there is no competition whenever you are your authentic self. I've learned that for myself because, you know, I'm a coach and lead a crew of coaches, and how many are out there? There's tons. And it's trusting that positioning. And then the next is products. This is where a lot of people get hung up in, you know, what do I do with products? Do I make a product first and then attract the audience for that and push it, like force it down the throat of people with Facebook ads and Instagram ads and to get my marketing out there so people recognize me? Or do I build the list first and that messaging before I get to products? And in your framework and your blueprint here, you know, it's fifth on the list. So let's unpack the nature of products for a personal brand.
Yeah, I love talking about this because I want to save people a lot of heartache.
Right. Please.
You know, there are a lot of marketing guys out there, a lot of marketing gurus out there that will say, just launch a product and, you know, everything will be fine. I understand where they're coming from. But when you say that to somebody who hasn't done the hard work of figuring out who they are, what they want to say, you're really leading them down a path of almost crushing, devastating disappointment to the point that they won't try again. And that's what breaks my heart.
Right.
Listen, as entrepreneurs, we're going to fail more than we succeed. We are. That's just the reality of the situation. However, when you have a small child, a baby, and you are like, hey, I want you to go up to the plate and try to hit a baseball from an adult that's throwing full speed, they're going to fail. And they're going to be like, this is so impossible. I'm never going to try again. That's not responsible coaching. Right. That is not being a responsible guide to people who are out there. So I'm all for creating products if you know what you want to say. And if you validated what you're saying to an audience. So in that chapter, which is the fifth step of the process, I say validate, create, refine, relaunch, and over and over and over again. My book, You Are the Brand, is a poster child for this. I had these steps written out probably 7 years ago. Actually, on an upcoming podcast, I'm going to play the audio from when I came up with this framework. It's on my phone. iPhones do not lie. You can't change the timestamp.
Right.
from being in the car when I was driving to work in 2014. I came up with that framework. Now, over the years, I kept trying to validate it. I ran coaching groups through it. I did one-on-one coaching clients through it. Some people hired me to work for them, as you mentioned,
Right.
and I tested it there. I tested it in various courses. I tried to figure out where the thing was breaking, where people were getting stuck. I validated it. Then I created it. Then I kept refining it to the point where now in 2020, 2021, I felt like I could confidently put it in a book and say, you should read this.
Yes.
This has been tested for years. Now, I could have jumped the gun years ago and written, a half-ass book. I could have written a C- book. Maybe my career would have taken off. But in integrity, I can't do that.
Right.
That's one of my core values, to not lie to people, Yeah. And so when it comes to creating your products, I would honestly ask a person, can you sell it to one person first?
Right.
Okay, now that you've sold it to one person, can you sell it to 10 people in a group? Okay, now that you've sold it to 10 people in a group, can you sell it as a video only course or product? Let's validate that, because the content might be the same, but the medium is different.
Fair enough. Right.
Right. That's an X factor, right? That's a change factor. Can you make this offer available 24/7, or do you have to have a closed launch? Do you have to have a deadline on when people can sign up? All of these things can affect the performance of sales. And so you need to go through it like an inspection checklist for your car. Let's test this. If that's not broken, let's test the next thing. If that's not broken, you go right down the list
and measure.
That's how you measure it. You're right. And that's how all of these people who have launched successful products that have lasted for 5, 8, 10, 15 years on the market, that's how they all built it.
Yeah. And you say it's not about hope. We can't hope our way to success. And so I love that there is math involved. Sorry for that. For those people who are going, I thought I graduated. In fact, you have a joke about being Asian and not good at math.
Yeah, I'm really bad at math. I'm bad at math. I know that's stereotypical to say Asian people are good at math. It's a stereotype because it's generally true. That's why stereotypes exist sometimes.
Exactly.
But no, I'm not good at math. I'm the Asian guy. I'm the Korean guy that people hire to write things in English. How ironic is that? So that just goes to show you can do anything in this world if you develop a critical skill and you build a brand. The possibilities are almost limitless.
Yeah.
But you take the time to validate.
So many people are ready to do this. I love that you've put this in a book. I really appreciate that you took your wisdom and put it in a book, because I've been in all of your programs, and digesting it in that way, piecemeal, is great. However, this is tangible. I can hold it, and literally I call it my new Bible. And so then you unpack pricing, because pricing's another big, a big stop for people. I have this expertise, I have this message, I have this longing and this want to connect with people. And maybe they've been on stages and they haven't been prepared at the back of the room to take people to the next level of anything that they can take tangible home with people. And then we go to that pricing. How do I price things? I love that you share your story in here of how you started, with free, and then you ankle, people up the chain and build out an entire suite of engagement. So where do people mess up when it comes to pricing?
Well, here's the wonderful thing about the blueprint that I've created. It's based on the previous steps. So if you know your positioning, then you know what product to create. Right. And then if you know what product to create and you know your positioning, you know how to price it. Too many people price themselves, whether it's a product or a service, by looking at what other people are doing in the market and just copying it, or even worse yet, discounting themselves. Right. They don't really think about unto themselves how much value they're bringing to the market with a particular program or product or service. So consultants do this all the time. I've heard this from a lot of my consultant friends. Hey man, how much do you charge for this particular service? I'm like, I'm not going to tell you that, because I'm not going to give you a straight answer, because it's different for every client. It's like, really?
It's so true.
How do you do it? And I'm like, well, I have this little system, and it's in the chapter,
totally
on pricing in this book. Yeah. And I actually think that, all things being said equal, This chapter alone is worth the $15 you'll pay for the book.
100%.
Now, because it'll save you a lot. It'll save you from leaving a lot of money on the table. But where I start, Tina Marie, is I first ask, what is your traffic from hell hourly price? I live just outside of, I live just outside of New York City, in Fort Lee, New Jersey, just across, where the GW Bridge comes into New Jersey. Like out my window right now, like 30 feet from my front door, I can walk to the bus stop that will take me to Times Square. Okay. Now, if somebody called me and said, hey, I'm in the middle of Times Square, I've got X amount of dollars here waiting for you, but you have to drive through 30 minutes of the worst George Washington Bridge from New Jersey into Manhattan traffic, pick up the check and drive back to your house. How much money would that have to be? Now, that is what I call the traffic from hell hourly price. I definitely wouldn't do it for $100. I'd be like, bro, keep it.
Yeah.
500. I'm still not sure at this point in my career. I'm not sure that I would do that.
Right.
5,000, maybe I think about it. Depends on the day. Right. And I'm not saying that that's what becomes your hourly rate for all things. It's just a starting point.
Right.
And the reason we have to have a starting point is because without it, we don't have a North Star. And we psychologically all tend to, correct me if I'm wrong, think of pricing a project or a service the least amount we can charge that we would do it for, but not more so that we lose the gig.
Yes.
Right? We're like, if I price too high, they might say no. So I'll bring it down a little. I'm not too happy about the number, but maybe they'll say yes. They've got to say yes to this, right?
Yeah.
Great story in the book. Ken Davis, who's the founder of SCORE, which is a public speaker training program, tells this great story. He said, when I first started out my career, Ken gave this speech, and there was a businessman in the crowd who was so impressed with his talk. He walked up to Ken after the session and said, Ken, I'd love for you to come to my company and speak to our employees. How much is your fee? And Ken lowballed the price, thinking that it would get the guy to say yes, because he didn't want to lose the gig, right? This is what happens.
Fear run that show at that moment, right? That was fear.
Yep. Yep. And you know what? The guy said, he said, after he heard the fee, he said, oh, I'm sorry. We only hire professionals. And he didn't get the gig.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Sabotaged himself, shot himself in the foot.
Right there, right?
Yeah.
And that story illustrates what most of us go through and experience when we price things. So start with the traffic from hell. Think about Mike going over the GW Bridge into Times Square. I mean, it's only 3 miles, but it's going to take me an hour.
Yeah,
right, of the worst traffic. And I just start there, and then there's a table inside of that chapter where I explain how to use that as an anchor point to price different levels of engagement and different fee levels depending on the client. It's a 9-box grid, and it's really
I love the grid. I love the grid. I was going through that with Jackie the other night, and because she's a chiropractor, and she's like, oh wow, that's gonna help her. She's looking to up her services as well, and put in a VIP level so people can have a one-on-one with her that is an experience, right? She's building that. So that pricing chapter is amazing, and it really makes you think. And what value do you bring? You get to really understand yourself and what value do you bring to your client, and not lowball yourself anymore. So, we're all going to be doing this work together. And the pitch, if we're not pitch, we don't have a good pitch, we're not profiting. And being strong with who you are and getting it out there, because we need to do that ask. Without it, people aren't just going to come say, here, take my money.
Yeah, the pitch is the sales conversation. It's the sales pitch, right? And there are entire books written about sales pitches and copywriting, which is writing ads and stuff like that. But in that chapter, I share some of the most common scripts that I use on sales calls and things like that. And again, Tina Marie, like all of this is thank you. It's all impacted by the previous steps being built out. If you know your positioning in the market, you know what kind of product to create, right? And you know how to price the product, it changes your pitch. There are two companies I always use as an example when it comes to pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Louis Vuitton and Walmart.
Okay.
Right? I'm very familiar with Louis Vuitton. I've got the receipt right here. I just bought my sister a bag for her 40th birthday. For those of you watching on video here, there it is, right? Proof positive,
cool. Yeah.
And these guys, Louis Vuitton, they do not understand the word discount.
No.
That is not in their vocabulary. Nor should they. And, you walk in there and it's almost like offensive when you ask how much something is.
Mm-hmm.
And this was Esther's 40th birthday. So I was going to bling her out. She never buys anything nice for herself. And the pitch there is not like, hey, discounts available, price matching coupon. They don't say that. Right. Whereas Walmart, you can't buy anything that's over like $500 there.
Right.
I mean, everything, both companies make a lot of money. It's all discounted.
Mm-hmm.
And they both make a lot of money, but they pitch their offers in very different ways because they understand their positioning, products, and pricing. So in that chapter, we get into some of the more common sales scripts, even copywriting and email templates that I use to market my business, especially when it comes to closing the sale for online products or coaching that I offer. That's all in there. And when you do that well, when you have all of these previous 7 steps built out well, it makes it very easy to find partners. Yeah. Partners who will say, Mike, we want to promote your stuff. We want to partner with you. Will you help promote our stuff? I have a friend, Selena Sue. She's a publicity strategist. Everything Selena does is 1000% excellent. I mean, she's an inspiration to me. And she will ask me, hey, would you be willing to promote our course or our event? And I just think about how high this girl's standards are for her business and how honored I am that she would ask.
Yes.
And she would never say, well, it's because you have a great point of view and great personal stories and a wonderful platform and great positioning and products. And she'll never say that. She doesn't even think of it that way. She just thinks Mike Kim has got his act together.
Mm-hmm.
And
trusted.
let me promote him, or maybe he'll promote us. We trust him. Like you just said, we have that relationship. And it's because subconsciously, everyone's always looking at the totality of your body of work. If you show up a certain way all the time, like you mentioned, consistently, people will start to think, it's pretty clear what Tina Marie does. It's pretty clear what Mike Kim does. It's pretty, they do things with excellence. And that's what makes it easy to attract partners. I say in the book, relationships are rocket ships.
Yeah.
No one makes it in this industry alone. We just don't. There's no lone rangers here. But if you build a solid brand and you build out these steps, you follow this blueprint, you will be in a position to attract great partners who will get your message out there, get your message heard.
Exactly. And I love that that's your final P in the 8-step framework and blueprint here. And so I really love that you've shared that with us. And I encourage all of us to go get the book. You are the brand. If you know that you want to do remessaging and rebranding of yourself, that it hasn't been cohesive and something's been left on the table, this is your new marketing Bible, messaging Bible. And if you are launching into your own way in the world, you want to be out there and you want people to know who you are, this is where you begin. And I'm very interested in looking forward to taking the steps with all of you and having that message. I want to tell you how you're going to find Mike. So of course, Amazon, you're going to find the book on Amazon and any other book reseller. And congratulations on your best-selling. Was it New York Times? And I mean,
we hit the Wall Street Journal and the USA Today.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. And so MikeKim.com, how easy is that? If you can't spell that, let's go back to third grade. So it's MikeKim.com, and on Instagram, on the IG, it's Mike Kim TV, Facebook, Mike Kim TV, Twitter, Mike Kim TV, LinkedIn, Mike Kim TV. You see the pattern here? Consistency. We've been talking about that. And then the other thing is that inside the book, there's also bonuses. We all love bonuses. So you're going to find when you start reading the book that Mike has hidden some things in there where you're going to go online and have some additional digital content. You're going to have some videos from Mike stepping you through extras. and we always want extra. And so unpack that. Thank you so much for being here. I love our conversations. And for those that are also watching, we dressed alike today. It was really cool. So
unplanned.
unplanned completely.
On the same wavelength, and the
Totally.
frequency was just speaking to us. So.
Yeah. And I really appreciate you and who you are and your authenticity and just the way you've lived your life. So thank you for being the most authentic Mike Kim ever.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thanks, Tina Marie. And thank you for having me today, and all of you who tuned in. Thanks for listening.
Yay. And you're going to find him. Your podcast is the Brand You podcast as well. And that is solid. Been out there for many years. You want to go listen to those and make it a fave. So thank you so much. And we will keep in touch. And yes. Everybody, go favorite the Light Your Life podcast and learn more from amazing people just like Mike. Make it a great day.